Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is John Crutchfield at the Greater Killeen Chamber of Commerce. This is a Facebook Live session. I'm joined today by two distinguished guests, Dr. John Kraft, who's Superintendent of the Killeen Independent School District and also Chair of our Public Policy Council, and Congressman Roger Williams. Before we get into it with them, let me make a couple of announcements. On the front of this. This is a Facebook event, and if you have questions, you can type them into the comments section, and they will come to us. We will try to get them to them time permitting. I also need to tell you, and the Congressman will appreciate this since he's a car dealer, we have a sponsor for this event. It happens to be All-American Chevrolet in Killeen, and we'll talk a little bit more about them at the end of the broadcast. I'd also ask you to like and share this event. You can begin doing that now. We'd like to add some legs to it and get it out. And the way to do that is if the people who are viewing will like and share. So I'll remind you periodically through the event to like and share the event. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kraft, who's going to introduce the Congressman, and then we'll start into some discussion. John?
Great. Thank you, John. Again, John Kraft, we are elated to have Congressman Roger Williams with us this afternoon. I think you probably all know Congressman Williams. He's a true Texan and a friend to us here at Central Texas. He represents the 25th Congressional District of Texas, which stretches from Tarrant County in the north to Hays County in the south and includes much of the Texas Hill Country and Austin. Roger attended the Texas Christian University, where he was an All-Southwest Conference baseball player and named to TCU's All-Decade team for the 1960s. Upon graduating, Roger was drafted by the Atlanta Braves and played in their farm system for many years before deciding to begin a new career as a small business owner and head of baseball coach at TCU. Roger was appointed by Governor Rick Perry to serve as the Texas Secretary of State, where he helped usher an unprecedented economic growth to the state. We're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about those experiences, hoping they will carry forward in our unprecedented time we're experiencing now. He also served as the state's chief liaison for the Texas Border and Mexican Affairs. In 2012, Roger was elected to Congress. Honored to represent Fort Hood, he was appointed to the National Defense Authorization Conference Committee for fiscal year 2018, which ultimately led to the largest pay raise for our troops in 8 years. It also paved the way for increased funding for improvements critical to the infrastructure here at Fort Hood. In Congress, Roger has been the voice of small business owners across America, and his real business experience has made him an effective leader and legislator. Last Congress, he authored a tax reform package called Jumpstart America, which served as a framework for the historic tax reform package that modernized America's outdated tax code from a true business perspective. In the 116th Congress, Roger serves on both the Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Financial Institutions and the Subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy within the Financial Services Committee. He loves sports. Sports has followed Congressman Williams to the Capitol, where he is the chair of the bipartisan Congressional Baseball Caucus and the College Football Caucus, which we're hoping to resume here shortly, Congressman. He is also the coach and manager of the Republican Congressional Baseball Team, a proud family man and truly a true Texan. We are so elated to, again, have you with us, Congressman Williams. I'm going to turn the platform over to you and allow you to open up with your thoughts at this point in time.
Well, thank you, Doctor. And I want to say briefly to you, thanks for your leadership. You're going through some times that some of your predecessors have not had to deal with. So thank you for your leadership in that and taking care of our educational needs of our future. We appreciate that greatly. And John Crutchfield, who chairs the chamber, as a small business owner myself, I'm a chamber member. I know you realize the importance of the chamber, and the small business owners really look up to your leadership, especially in the time right now. So thanks for that. I just want to say to everybody on today, it's my great honor to serve you in the United States Congress, Congressional District 25. As you heard from Dr. Kraft, I am a small business owner. I am Main Street America. I'm everything that all of you are, family business for 89 years. So When I vote on something, I'm going to feel the pain or feel the good, which comes out of a lot of those things that we do in Washington, D.C. This is at times I tell people that is so unique. We all know that. We've never seen it before. I try to impress upon folks, don't be afraid of what's happening. We need to be aware of what's happening. I think things are getting better through the leadership of President Trump, and even Governor Abbott has done a fantastic job in ramping out, bringing Texas back to being open again is critical. We've passed several stimulus packages, which we'll talk about today, I'm sure, in Washington. And I think the way we get out of this is going to be with empowering small business owners, putting people back to work. The great thing about this time, if you can say a great thing about this time, unlike '08, where the banks had no money, the banks have money now, and the interest rates are very, very low. So we need to put people back to work, let competition grow, let risk and reward get us back to what creates capitalism. And just remember, in January, we had more jobs than people, which is unbelievable. And look what's happened in 112, 113 days to our economy. So I think if by seeing what's happening with the Paycheck Protection Program, getting money in the hands of small business owners, I believe that we possibly can see growth in the fourth quarter. Some people disagree with me, but I've been in business for 50 years. I've seen a lot of things happen. I believe in Main Street. I believe in small business. I believe in entrepreneurship, everything we have in Bell County. And I think we could see growth in our country the fourth quarter and certainly beginning in next year. So again, I want to thank everybody for allowing me to serve in the Congress. It's a huge honor. And Dr. Kraft and Chairman Crutchfield, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, Congressman Williams, I'm going to ask your first question, and if it's okay, it's going to be really a follow-on on really what you just described and articulated. Lessons learned. This has obviously been a really an interesting situation that we've all found ourselves in and working together to navigate. What would you suggest in really reflecting upon the last 8 to 12 weeks in regards to the pandemic? What are some lessons learned you feel like we'll be taking forward in dealing with the next potential pandemic and how we continue to progress forward?
Well, I think one lesson learned is don't trust China. China is not our friend, and we need to understand that, and so forth. We also need to understand the idea of making our medicines out of this country is not a good practice. And of course, a lot of our medicine comes directly from China. We need to bring producers over here in America to create jobs and, frankly, to create safety and security. And we need to begin to do that. The president wants to do that. Local communities right here in Texas are already thinking about who could they bring over and offers that they could offer those folks. But look, understand who our enemies and friends are, okay? And understand that this is the United States of America, the greatest economy in the world. We should not rely on China or anybody else to produce our drugs. We've seen what happens when our citizens get sick. We've seen what happens when our military gets sick. We don't need that to happen again. We need to be controlling our future, not being controlled by. So I think those are a couple of things right there that we have learned. Also, I think what we've learned is the strength of the American people. The American people have done what they've been asked. Governor Abbott, President Trump, all the doctors ask us to understand social distancing, washing and our hands. This kind of thing has helped done a lot in getting us back in business. So I think those are the kind of things we take back. But let's remember, we are America. We're the greatest country in the world. We're the greatest economy in the world. We need to make things here. And the bottom line is this. If we just think of it this way, how about the idea of made in America? That would go a long way. And that's what I'm behind. That's what all of you are behind.
Thank you.
So, John, let me follow up on that, if you don't mind. This notion of supply chain is one that we really kind of ignored for a while, and that most of us in the chamber world are free traders, free enterprise folks, and we don't like the government getting involved in that. And as we got into eliminating tariffs and quotas and all of that sort of thing, that there were really no boundaries. And I agree some of that needs to come back. But as I heard you just state, I believe I heard you state correctly, that should be done in the free enterprise sector of the economy. The government shouldn't, maybe they should designate critical manufacturing infrastructure, but they shouldn't be mandating it in some fashion. Is that a fair statement?
No, that's exactly right. The government needs to get out of a lot of things. I've said all along, John, that the government should do three things: collect our taxes, defend our borders, help us with infrastructure, and let competition work. And we can compete with anyone. We saw when you lower taxes, what it can do to the economy and what kind of jobs it can keep in our country and bring to our country. So, it's the private sector that needs to do this and entice people to come to America, stay in America, create American jobs. We got the greatest minds there are in the world. Let's take advantage of that and let the government do the three things I just talked about and let competition work.
Got it. John?
Sure. I'm going to kind of stay on the topic of the pandemic, Congressman, if that's okay. The CARES Act has provided about $3 billion in stimulus spending to serve as really an economic bridge to get move our economy from a partial shutdown to recovery. And I think that it's safe to say that most are going to be in agreement that it was absolutely necessary. And I know that you enthusiastically supported it, so thank you for your continued support in that regard. Another round. What is your view as far as projecting forward, moving forward? Do you foresee that in the future?
Well, that's why you have Republicans and Democrats. We have debate, and I'm one of those that we talked about this before. Well, I have a real concern for the debt, and this money that we put in the paycheck stimulus program had to be done. There's no question it had to be done. I look at it as a business interruption package, but at the same time, we got to remember that we've got to stop the spending. The cash flow is always going to be there. It's going to be the spending that gets us in the debt thing. With all that being said, we've had these three stimulus packages. I don't know that we need another one. I mean, where's the money coming from? And we haven't even given this third one or the 3.5 or the second one a chance to see it even work. And there's still money available in the second tranche on the PPP. So we need to see how it works, and let's turn this over to the private sector. Let's begin to open the doors and breathe again, and let's open up and see what the private sector can do by creating competition and capital and so forth. So I don't know that we need to continue to just pour money in. We don't have the money is the bottom line. It's going to affect debt. There's a point we turn it over to the private sector. And I believe that point is right now. And the PPP has worked. I saw a fact the other day that over 90% of the money that in the first tranche of the PPP went into businesses with 60 employees or less. So that means it's working. And, there's been some other stories out there, but it is working. I get so many people come to me and say, Roger, thank you for voting for PPP. It saved my business. It helped my business. I kept my employees, and that's what it's designed for. So let's see how what we've done works before we start stepping out and injecting more money in. Let's let the private sector inject private sector money in rather than the government, because the private sector money is real money. Right now, what we're doing with the government is kind of playing with not so real money.
Great, thank you.
Let me do a couple follow-ups, John, if you don't mind. First is kind of a shameless plea for chambers of commerce's 501c6s, which were excluded from the payroll protection plan under the CARES Act, and there's an effort to get them included going forward. And I understand there's some legislation that's been filed recently, House Resolution 6886 by Congressman Roy to do that. And I understand there are problems. There are a lot of 501c6s. Some don't need funding. That's a big can of worms. But it is one that the U.S. Chamber's actively pursuing, and they're asking member chambers like ours to support them in that. Do you see the prospects of that getting done, or is including chambers in the payroll protection program just institutionally too difficult to pull off?
No, I mean we can pull it off. I'm not so sure you shouldn't have been in it to begin with, but you got wrapped up in politics. You got wrapped up with some other folks that may not have been as worthy. I have said all along and publicly that if you're going to ramp out the economy, bring it out again, you need your chambers to help you, because the chambers represent small business. It's just like all of you. If we have the chamber behind our business moving us forward.
I think we've lost connectivity. We'll pause.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
I think we're logging back in. Apologize. Congressman, sorry, we lost you. Are you there? Congressman Williams, can you hear us okay?
So there's an issue here.
Congressman Williams, we can see.
It's yeah.
We've got you. I don't know if you can receive us or not. Congressman, we can see you.
Well, we'd be patient. This will come back. Can you hear me, John?
I can hear you fine. It's pretty clear. I'm getting a pretty grainy resolution from Congressman Williams. It's obviously delayed.
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear everybody and see everybody.
Okay. All right.
Great.
So,
sorry, we lost you about halfway through that previous discussion.
It was that train going through town.
yeah. So my takeaway is we can put you in the plus column in terms of trying to get chambers included in payroll protection if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, I mean, because the chambers help drive the comeback, and we need all the help we can get as small business owners.
Dr. Kraft and I have been talking a great deal recently about the secondary and tertiary effects of this pandemic, not so much the health side of it, but the economic side of it, and all of the effects we're going to have to deal with. And we actually saw this come up in our board meeting day before yesterday. To some extent, we're incentivizing unemployment now, in that we have businesses who are trying to get their employees to come back to work, and they don't want to come back to work because they're doing well on unemployment, at least through July. We've got folks that want to hire people and they can't get them to come in because they're doing well on unemployment. And one of the concerns I have about, I think it's the HEROES Act, that the next round of stimulus includes a good deal more unemployment, and I know there are concerns about this. So how do we turn that off? It's turned off now, but certainly we don't want to turn it back on.
Yeah, the HEROES Act, which was written by Nancy Pelosi, I think extends that into January, which all it does, that prohibits a comeback of the economy and so forth. So what we have to do is to make sure that something like that doesn't pass, and we need to begin to have these people that are on this unemployment situation that are making more money than in many cases what they did on their job, which was a fault of the act. There's no question about it. But it's going to run out, and they need to come back and go to work. And if they've been offered their job and refuse it, that can affect their unemployment benefits too. Right. So employers need to make sure they're going ahead and asking and offering these jobs to these folks, and then letting the state workforce group commissions know about that. So it might entice some of these people to get on to work and get back getting a paycheck from the people they work for.
Yeah, and there's another effect that's being talked about in the state now, and you've probably seen it. The state's unemployment fund is about broke, and so the premiums are going to go up. They have to go up, but in the interim, I think the state has indicated they're going to come to the federal government and look for a kind of a bridge loan for that. Do you expect to see that happen, and what are the prospects for it?
Yeah, I do. In fact, just before I was on with you guys in your group, I was Ed Cerna from the Workforce Commission and I were conversing, and he said there's a lot of publicity out there that the fund is going to run out, and he said it's not going to run out. They will look toward the federal government for some help. Small business that has been devastated through this should not be paying increased premiums on workers they're trying to get back, for crying out loud. So, I mean, we talk about a comeback. And that's what I talked about earlier. Less regulations and let small business breathe. Let them do what they do without the burden of government. We'll get back here. But the fund's not running out. The federal government will be asked to help. And small businesses should not be paying increased premiums for something that they're trying to stop themselves by hiring people.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'm just going to ask a real quick follow-up question. And I know this is going to be a request to pull out the crystal ball. Unemployment, I know that particularly as it is being portrayed by the media is on the rise. At least the applications are on the rise. Now, of course, the benefits being provided are showing signs of positive declining. Do you foresee, from where you sit, do you foresee these numbers being curtailed in the near future, and the unemployment and the applications for unemployment benefits to subside in the near future?
Yeah, I think so. Remember, back in January, we had more jobs than people. And now here we are talking about 14 to 15% unemployment. We're already beginning to see a slowdown. I think that, yes, if we get into a situation where we begin to have growth in the fourth quarter, you're going to see all of this come down again. I think we can come back quicker. I read where people say it could be years. I don't believe that. As a business person, and you all being as business people, you know the power of Main Street. You know the power of small business. So I think we can come back here fairly quickly. And of course, what that will do, that will require workers, because when you sell more, you service more, you fix more, you're going to need more people. And I think that will begin to come down. Yes. And get back to normal. Just from the fact we're going to be creating jobs. I believe that. I mean, if a business doesn't come back through this, there should be another one take its place, another young entrepreneur wanting to get started, wanting to take risk. And if we lose one, hopefully we'll gain one. That's what's always happened. And we'll be back in business.
So let me ask a question about another secondary impact of this that we need to be concerned about. We're starting to see more and more of this. An organization you're familiar with called the Texans for Lawsuit Reform. I put out a paper on it the other day, and I think even Senator McConnell mentioned it. And that's this notion of creating some form of liability protection for essential employees and essential businesses and first responders and all of those folks who had to work through this, who now are exposed to some liability because of exposure to the disease and that sort of thing. Is that moving around on Capitol Hill much? Are you seeing much? Any planning being done on that?
Well, there is a lot of talk about it, and it's one of those political things. One side is not really supportive of it. The other side is. TLR does a great job in bringing this stuff to the forefront for everybody. But I, as a business owner, am really concerned about liability. The problem is right now, small businesses, we're not going to be able to start our economy again if every time you have a small business startup or one existing and they get sued because of somebody said they fell or they breathe in the wrong air or whatever the case may be, and you got trial lawyers out there going after small business, how are we going to grow the economy? Mitch McConnell has said that anything that comes before the Senate that doesn't have a liability insurance package on it is dead in the water. I agree with him. I am a small business owner. I don't want to have to worry about that. I don't want to have to take a risk. I don't want to have to deal with it with somebody that says that something happened in my business, and then they can wipe my business out when I'm trying to get started and hire these people back. So yes, it's talked about a lot, and it's. I think that we'll come up with something that does protect Main Street America, small business, big business, from lawsuits that may not be real and sued by the trial lawyers.
Well, Congressman, we appreciate it because these are the exact conversations that I am engaged in currently in trying to reopen and bring back normalcy, and your efforts are greatly appreciated in that regard because these are the real conversations that we're up against at this point. So thank you again. I'm going to shift gears real quickly, if it's okay, Congressman. This may ask you to reflect upon your experiences as Secretary of State. The U.S. Census. There are obviously implications with accurate and reliable, valid census information being collected. The pandemic has obviously and rightfully so distracted from that effort. What are your thoughts on the census at this point?
Well, the census is important. I remember when I was a kid growing up that your parents volunteered to take the census in the neighborhood, and when they came to count, it was an exciting time. But the census is important. We need to know who's here in our country, and also, we gauge our congressional districts, and a lot of voting things issued based on the Senate every 10 years. This is a redistricting year politically, so it's important. Everybody needs to participate. We're always arguing over what does the form say, but we need to get that right. We need to participate so we can get our count right on who can vote and who can't vote, and then get the congressional districts lined up for this next 10-year cycle. So the census is very important. It's very political right now, and we need to identify how we're going to do it, get our volunteers out, and if we can, make it something fun like it used to be, rather than a political force that everybody's trying to adjust numbers on to benefit them instead of our country.
Let me run through a couple of comments and questions that we received. Mayor Jose Segura, you know well, Congressman, sent a note, said, "Thank you for what you've done to help our cities pull through this. We appreciate your efforts, particularly in our regional airport." And I can tell you that city manager and I have talked about this many times. Our airport would be in bad trouble without the stimulus funding that was provided by you guys. And I know the city really appreciates that. And here's a question from Major General Retired Ken Cox, and I'll read it verbatim. First, my thanks to you for your personal time today and also what you do for our community and nation every day. My question relates to budgets and the way ahead. With a tremendous amount of funding dedicated to this current situation and what will be needed as things continue to mature, I have a concern about the impact to defense budgets in the current year, funds being diverted, as well as FY21 and possibly beyond. What will Congress do to ensure we continue to fund the Department of Defense with the funding they need to ensure the defense of our nation and continued modernization of our Army?
Well, that's a great question. I want to first of all thank the author of that question for his public service and his great service to our country. It shouldn't be a fight, but it is a fight on how we're going to fund our military. Every Congress, I think there's nothing more important than funding our military. There are a lot of reasons. Without a strong military, a U.S. military, a strong presence, if we're not the strongest in the world, I think the world's going to implode. And that's why we've got to be the strongest power. So I will always support our military and the budget. Unfortunately, there's some that want to draw from that to help other issues. And that's the debate we have in Washington. But I think that with this president and with the Senate we have, and a lot of us here in the House, we understand the importance of the military and the defense budget. We're going to be fighting for it as tooth and nail. I promise you that. This president understands it. He wants a strong military. So it's just always going to be political, but we need to have the right people fighting for it and selling it with the idea that if we don't have the best military in the world, our country will not be what it is and the world will implode.
Thank you, sir. John, let me stick one more in here real quick. This comes from our county judge, David Blackburn, who you both know well. So the question I have is whether the next round of federal grant monies to local governments will be under the same process and formula as this last round, meaning non-entitlement counties and cities have to work through the state, which has not worked well.
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things we talk about in a tranche 4 is several things, is infrastructure. The president wants to talk about infrastructure, and then funding and helping our local communities and so forth. And the president wants to get into that almost immediately. And a lot of our local communities need help. They've been affected. I will tell you, there's a lot of communities, not so much in Texas, but around the country, that the reason they're in trouble is not because of coronavirus, it's because of mismanagement and bad spending. And I'm not so sure I want Texas dollars helping them out, but I do want to help out our local communities that work so hard to meet budgets and educate children and create jobs. So I think we're going to be getting involved in that sooner than later, and how it trickles down on how we go through the state as opposed to federal government will be what we talk about. I'd like for the judge to be one of my dialogue people on that, so we get the best practice we can offer. But I think we're going to be entering that here pretty quickly. The president wants to do it, and see if we can't help the local communities, some of them, get back on their feet as they should be.
John?
Yeah, I have just one more question, Congressman Williams, if it's okay. Oil and energy, as you well know, the state of Texas plays a vital role in that regard. It's been a struggle here in recent weeks. Again, asking you to look through your crystal ball. Do you foresee some light at the end of the tunnel in regards to oil and gas, the market, and energy relief, and us getting it back on track?
Well, I do. And I mean, I'll tell you, you talk about Texas taking a double whammy, right? We picked coronavirus and the price of oil all there at one time, but that just shows the strength and the power of Texans. We've been able to begin to come back from that. But no, our oil and gas producers have taken a huge hit. It will come back, and Texas will be the beneficiary of it. I think that we need, in the United States, we need to continue, as the president wants to be independent of rather than dependent on foreign nations. The Saudis and the Russians are having their price war go on over there. I think that we need to continue to think about creating a partnership between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. There's a tremendous amount of energy in these in these nations. Take advantage of that. Relieve ourselves from foreign oil. The president energy, and the president's taking us in that direction. And you couldn't have anybody better than our friends in the oil business that understand risk and reward. They understand gambling. They understand rolling the dice to get us back on track again. So the president is talking to leaders in the not only big producers, independent producers, big oil companies. He's talking about how we can begin to get them back on track, get them going again, so they do what they do best, and become dominant again. So yes, I believe it will come back. I'm a half full guy. I believe it'll come back sooner than later. And the price of the pump has been down accordingly. So from that side of the coin, people have been able to move around and maybe drive more. But we need to have a stable oil price that we're used to, and lead the nation, lead the world in production. And we got the assets to do that.
Totally agree.
Let me backtrack just a little bit. One of our small businesses, Bob Parker with Absbell Electronics here in the community, has a question about the payroll protection program that I think is pertinent. Said he's read that there have been several proposals submitted to change payroll protection program requirements and either extending the 8-week, the timeline for which the payroll expenditures are reducing the percentage of the loan that has to be applied strictly to payroll. Do you have any update on the progress of either of these initiatives?
Well, on the extending the 8 weeks, there's been talk to extending it to 24 weeks. That does not mean that there'll be more money. It means that they'll have more time to hire their people and get it going and so forth like that. That's been the 8 weeks has been a real problem with some industries that are not able to get their workforce back for a lot of the reasons we just talked about. So that's out there, and I think we go up next week, and that may be something that we actually are voting on to see if that goes from 8 to 24 weeks. What was the other part of that question?
It was the percentage, making more of the percentage usable for expenses other than payroll.
Yeah.
The 75-25
Yeah.
split.
Right. There's been talk to making it 50-50 for a lot of reasons. A lot of businesses, payroll is not their driver as far as expenses are concerned. So there's been a conversation about reducing that 75% to maybe 50-50.
Thank you, sir. Here's another issue, and this goes back to your days as Secretary of State, the voting process, and again, these are secondary effects of this pandemic. People are concerned about voting in person, and at the same time, there's a big push around the country from various groups wanting to vote by mail. And I know the president has been very clear in stating his opposition to voting by mail. What are your views about that? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? What are the concerns?
Well, as your former Secretary of State under Governor Perry, I oversaw the elections, and I've seen every angle you can imagine. A lot of these people that say now they're concerned about in-person voting, they didn't know they were concerned until somebody told them, you know? And so the thing about it is the federal government should not be telling states what to do on voting. It's the business of the state. We have in Texas the opportunity to vote by mail if you're over 65 and meet other criteria, and that's fine. But there's nothing more precious than voting. We have friends and family have died, many cases, fighting for the right to vote. And it's all about secret ballot. So mail-in ballots are not going to work for everybody. I can tell you when I was Secretary of State, it was the easiest way to cheat. It created fraud. People were prosecuted over it for voting for their dead relatives and so forth. That's not going to help the program. And the problem is, if you do that, it does allow for cheating, and you affect results that it could affect the history of our country. So I'm not for mail-in ballots unless it meets the criteria that we've had in Texas for many, many years. And this is, the great thing about America, it's secret ballot. You go to the ballot box, you vote, and that's who you voted for. So I'm going to fight against mail-in ballots for everybody doing it. And I think it's just keeps the integrity of our election laws secure. And it's something we're going to have to talk about fairly soon.
Well, and you would think that we are smart enough to figure out ways to let people vote in person and protect their health at the same time. It's done.
Yeah, I mean, if you can go to Walmart, you can go vote. I mean, we can fix that. So mail-in ballots are not the way to go.
All right, we're getting close to the end here. If anyone has questions they want to send in, I'd invite them to do it pretty quickly before we wind up. Let me ask about a subject, Congressman, that we could do a seminar on, and that's the notion of regulation of social media. More and more people now are relying on social media for their news, and social media is a platform not only to put out information, but to accumulate data and sell ads and all of that sort of thing. And it seems like we're seeing more and more censorship occurring on social media. And regulation is an issue that comes up from time to time. I know you're not in favor of regulation, and I'm not either, but I'm really concerned about the media going forward in this country because they have a vital role to play. And it seems to me they're not doing a very good job of that nowadays.
Well, you're right. The media is supposed to be non-biased. They're supposed to report the facts. Social media is everything. People get on that. They say things to you on social media they wouldn't say to your face, and so forth. But again, I don't know about regulation. I mean, freedom of speech and all the things are important. I just think the government needs to be aware. Certainly, I don't know about regulation as opposed to people just getting their word out and getting their opinion out and so forth. But right now, it's a very mean-spirited venue. There's no question about it. And when things get bad like that, you think about, well, they need to stop that. But we've already seen too much regulation and stopping what people have to say from a certain opinion. That's wrong. So I'm not ready for regulation. Freedom of speech is what we're all about. But I do think that regardless of party preference or whatever, the media could do a much better job in promoting the facts and not giving opinions.
Thank you, sir. John, have you got another question? If you don't, we'll let the congressman give us some parting thoughts.
Yeah, I think so. Congressman, if you have just a few minutes, we'll let you wrap it up. Bring us home.
Well, thank you for allowing this. I guess the only thing bad about this is if we weren't in a pandemic, I'd be down there right now in one of your spaces. We'd be having lunch and we'd be talking and we'd be seeing everybody. But this is a great venue. And I just want to say, everybody that's online, number one, thank you for allowing me to serve. It's a great honor. Number two, you got a great chamber. And I've seen good ones, I've seen bad ones, but this chamber fights for you. This chamber is able to give you answers to your questions. This chamber is totally hooked into my congressional district and my folks. If there's a question, they know they can get us and we'll give them an answer. So I think it's very important that the chamber continues. John, do what you're doing. Dr. Kraft, you do a great job with our schools, our young kids. To me, the young kids are under siege right now. They're not going to school. They're not having the best opportunity to learn. They're missing out on a lot of things, the football games, the baseball games, the proms and all that sort of thing, graduation. So I hope some point in time we get them back on track under your leadership. I know you'll be one of the first to do that. But I just want to thank everybody for being great Texans, for being small business owners. Small business is still the heartbeat of this country and what has made this country great, risk and reward. And let me just remind all of you, this is a tough time right now. But some of you have been like me. You remember when gasoline went to $1, that was going to end our country. We had 21% interest. We've had all kinds of things, 9/11, and we've recovered, and we're recovering from this right now. I think we've got great leadership in Governor Abbott and President Trump, and I'll continue to have District 25 totally on my mind as far as keeping everybody secure and safe and aware of opportunities that are out there, so we can continue to move on and have a great life for our families and those to come. So thanks again to all of you. I just say, may God bless all the people listening today in the chamber and the school district, and God bless our state and God bless our country. And thanks for having me here.
All right, let me wind up with two quick announcements. One, remind our viewers, anyone who sees this, to like and share. We'd appreciate that. That'll get it out. That'll extend its reach, and we would appreciate people liking and sharing on Facebook. Also, want to remind everyone that this event was sponsored by All American Chevrolet of Killeen. They sell a wide selection of new and used cars, trucks, and SUVs at their dealership, offer great deals on leasing and financing options. It's their goal to get you the best price possible on the vehicle you want. I'm sure Congressman Williams would like an opportunity to match that deal. They're proud to do business in the Killeen community, particularly with our local active military, and Austin Bixner is the general manager over there, a member of our Military Relations Council. Thank both of you for participating. We appreciate your time. Congressman, we look forward to seeing you in person and shaking your hand in the not too distant future. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks, Congressman. We appreciate your service. Take care.
Thank you.